It started like any other sunny afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood, kids playing, neighbors chatting, and families enjoying the day. But what happened next would leave the entire community shaken. A young boy, just 10 years old, still healing from severe burn scars after surviving a tragic house fire, was simply walking to the park when he was stopped by someone who claimed to be enforcing HOA rules. That someone, a woman known around the block as the HOA Karen. She wasn't concerned about noise, trash bins, or overgrown lawns. She called his *face* a violation. That's right. She confronted a child about his appearance, demanding he cover up, because she said his scars were disturbing to others. What she didn't know was that the boy's father, a local firefighter and hero, had just pulled up nearby, with his dashcam rolling. What followed next escalated quickly, voices raised. A crowd gathered, and the moment the woman crossed the line from rude to aggressive, things took a turn no one saw coming. The footage captured it all, and it didn't end the way she expected. But what exactly happened when the firefighter dad stepped in, and how did police get involved so fast? Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. The boy, named Ethan, had only recently started going outside again after months of surgeries and recovery. The fire that scarred him of everything, his home, his sense of safety, and nearly his life. But his spirit, still strong. That day, he just wanted to feel normal again. No hoodie, no hat, just sunshine on his skin. But instead of kindness, he was met with judgment. The woman, later identified as a board member of the local homeowners association, claimed she was acting on complaints. She said Ethan's appearance was alarming to other children and insisted she had the right to enforce visual standards in public spaces. Witnesses say she even tried to block his path, raising her voice, pointing fingers. Some neighbors started recording on their phones. Others looked away, unsure of what to do. Ethan froze, not sure whether to turn back or defend himself. That's when his father, Josh, a firefighter who'd seen more pain than most, arrived. He didn't rush in yelling. He quietly stepped out of his truck, dashcam already recording everything. Josh had been through fires, rescues, even life-or-death moments, but nothing could have prepared him for watching someone attack his son's dignity like this. And while he stayed calm, you could see it in his eyes. This wasn't over. Something was about to break. Josh stepped forward slowly, placing himself between Ethan and the woman. He didn't raise his voice, but there was a sharp edge in his tone when he asked her what exactly she meant by a face violation. She doubled down, waving a printed-out HOA document, though it said nothing about appearance. Neighbors began gathering, some clearly uncomfortable, others visibly upset. A few quietly supported Josh, while others whispered that the woman had caused trouble before. Behind the scenes, HOA politics had been brewing for months. The woman, Sandra, was known for her strict enforcement of rules, but lately it had gone beyond that. Some residents had already filed quiet complaints about her behavior, especially toward families she didn't personally approve of. This wasn't her first confrontation, but it was by far the most public, and now it was being recorded. Ethan clutched his dad's arm, trying to hold back tears. He didn't understand why someone would single him out. To him, his scars were part of a story he'd survived, not something to be ashamed of. Josh, still calm but clearly reaching a breaking point, asked Sandra again, this time louder, if she truly believed a child's injuries were against neighborhood rules. That's when someone in the crowd called the police. No one moved. No one knew what would happen next. But the dashcam was still rolling. As the minutes dragged on, the atmosphere shifted from uncomfortable to electric. Tension hung in the air. More neighbors came out of their homes, drawn by the raised voices and the sight of Josh standing protectively over his son. Sandra wasn't backing down. She kept pointing to her paperwork, insisting she was just doing her job, and that if people have an issue, they could take it up with the HOA. But her voice wavered now. She wasn't in control anymore. Ethan stayed quiet, still clinging to his dad. His face was pale, his scars glowing red in the afternoon sun. You could tell he wanted to disappear. A woman from across the street, Miss Delgado, a longtime neighbor, stepped in and stood beside Josh. "This is enough," she said firmly. "You're bullying a child. This isn't what this community stands for." That moment sparked something. More people began speaking out. Then came the sound that froze everyone, the sharp crackle of a police radio. A cruiser had pulled up just behind Josh's truck. Two officers stepped out slowly, scanning the crowd, already hearing a dozen people talking at once. One officer approached Sandra, while the other asked Josh what happened. He simply nodded toward the dashcam still recording. "Everything you need," he said, "is right there." And that's when everything started to unravel. The officers glanced at each other after hearing Josh mention the dashcam. One of them walked over to his truck to check the footage, while the other continued questioning Sandra. Her confidence started to crack. She began shifting her story, claiming she was only concerned for the emotional safety of other children. But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. People had seen and heard enough, and now there was actual video evidence. Then came the twist no one saw coming. As the officer reviewed the dashcam footage, another voice cut through the crowd, one of the other HOA board members, Mr. Whittaker. He pushed his way forward, holding a folder and looking pale. "I need to speak to the officers," he said, his voice tense. He handed them a copy of an internal HOA complaint, filed days ago against Sandra. The complaint accused her of targeting specific families and using HOA rules as a weapon for personal bias. Ethan's family had been mentioned directly, and now, with everything unfolding in public, that file just became crucial. The officers took the folder without a word. Sandra's expression shifted. She knew this was no longer just a neighborhood squabble. It was quickly turning into something bigger. Josh stayed silent, his arms still around Ethan, watching it all unfold. The question now wasn't just what Sandra did, but why? The officers took a moment to quietly review both the dashcam footage and the internal HOA complaint. The crowd stood in near silence now, all eyes on Sandra, who was starting to fidget and avoid eye contact. Josh stayed close to Ethan, gently whispering to him that everything was okay. But behind that calm exterior, you could feel the weight of months, maybe years, of quiet judgment finally reaching a breaking point. Then one officer stepped forward. He asked Sandra to come with him to the patrol car. Her face turned red as she started to argue, but the officer calmly told her she wasn't under arrest yet, but they needed to question her further based on possible harassment and misuse of her HOA authority. The moment felt surreal. Sandra, who had spent so long trying to control others with made-up rules, was now being held accountable in front of everyone. Just as the officers were about to leave with her, Mr. Whittaker spoke again, this time more firmly. He revealed that Sandra had previously pushed for a private amendment to HOA policies, one that would give her more power over community presentation standards. The board had quietly rejected it, but Sandra had been enforcing it anyway, without approval. That's when the officers looked at each other and nodded. This wasn't just about one incident, it was about abuse of authority. And then the final twist. As the patrol car pulled away, one of the neighbors, filming everything from their porch, stepped forward. She quietly told Josh she was an attorney and offered to help. This wasn't just wrong, she said. It was unlawful. Josh looked down at Ethan, who gave the smallest, most hopeful smile. The scars were still there, but something else had changed. This time, the whole neighborhood had seen the truth. In the days that followed, the story spread far beyond the neighborhood. The dashcam footage went viral, not just for the confrontation, but for the quiet strength Ethan and his dad showed. People across the country reached out with messages of support, and the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Sandra was officially removed from her position, and a new set of guidelines was put in place to ensure no board member could act alone again. Josh didn't press charges, but the attorney neighbor helped file a formal complaint with the city, making sure what happened that day would be documented. More importantly, Ethan began to walk outside more often. No hoodies, no hiding. He started going back to school and even joined a local youth group. The scars on his face were still there, but now so was his confidence. Neighbors who once stayed quiet during HOA disputes started speaking up. The community changed, not just because of what happened, but because people finally stood together. What began as a cruel act of judgment became a reminder that dignity, compassion, and courage are far more powerful than rules on paper. And in the end, Ethan didn't just survive the fire. He helped spark something stronger.